Loving greetings, everyone. I'm Connie Shaw, and this is my husband, Jim Wright. Thank you for joining us for this program entitled Equanimity, which means, as you can see, being steady, non reactive, staying calm, and being unflappable. Since the Lord can't use us maximally for his healing and leadership purposes unless we're clear and yielded instruments, it's vital that we do the necessary work to purify ourselves in order to steady the mind and the senses so that we can be strong vehicles that can contain his powerful energies without buckling under their intensity. As you know, the purification comes through the spiritual practices of selfless service to others, meditation, control of the senses through observation of our thoughts, and focus on a mantra. Of course, life itself also purifies us if we train ourselves to rise above pain, loss, rejection, or suffering, which have been caused by our own poor choices or reactions, either in the recent or distant past. Before we begin the program by sharing resources for equanimity and tell you some teaching stories about how God creates miracles through equanimous people, let's start the program with a prayer. First, though, remember, it takes courage not to be discouraged. It takes courage not to be discouraged. And now for the prayer. Beloved Lord, ascended masters and angelic hosts, we thank you for your loving protection in these chaotic days. Lord, we ask that you draw us deeply into your very being and increase our ability to hear the interior voice and to more quickly see our mistakes and selfishness so that we might more quickly bring love, comfort, and relief to the suffering people around us. Fill us with the fire of the Holy Spirit and with the clarity and confidence to do only your will as your global renewal gains global momentum. Help us to repair the social fabric of loving kindness, trust, and civility, knowing that all people are our brothers and sisters and, in fact, aspects of our very selves. Strengthen us in the defense and protection of all that we hold dear, and the way of the 5 eternal values of peace, truth, love, right action, and nonviolence, which underscore our spiritual and political freedoms. Help us to study and to protect the constitutions of our countries and to safeguard our families, homes, lands, and institutions. Let us evict and eject the corrupting values and practices that weaken and confuse our youth and population, pollute our land, food, air, water, weather, and wildlife. Let us become more proficient in working harmoniously with nature intelligence and the devas of all the systems and species to restore balance, health, and harmony to our beloved planet. We thank you in advance for the skill sets and the gifts of the Spirit that you will use through us to return this beleaguered planet to its pristine garden state. Kindly bring forth from us the courage, unity, strength, and purity to create heaven on earth, first within ourselves and then outwardly in the environment. Galvanize us with the focus and resolve to extend the divine love that we are to all beings who are also divine. So be it. It is done today. It is done to stay. It is done God's way. Amen. Now, Jim, let's show the Jot Notes chart and the disclaimer so that you can get ready to take notes. We do not diagnose, prescribe, or cure, and we're not medical doctors. Viewers are encouraged to seek help from their own healthcare givers. This educational, inspirational program is protected under free speech that is guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution and is never meant to harm or coerce anyone in any way, but only to empower viewers.
Today we have another packed program for you with 5 useful processes using the Russian healing mineral Shungite. Further, we have 8 teaching stories about people who were instruments of manifestation. And finally, we are sharing 11 ways that Mother Mary can help you on your path.
All right.
And now we'll show the Masters of Light slideshow. And we will have gazing following that. Now, if you would please uncross your legs or your ankles if you're sitting up off the floor, and place your hands face up in a receptive position and back down on your thighs or your knees or in your lap, whatever is most comfortable. If you're sitting on the floor, you can have crossed legs, of course. Whatever's comfortable. But you want to be open to whatever is coming in for you. Now, let's all take a few minutes to think of 3 or 4 wishes or prayers or intentions that we have for ourselves or for our loved ones. These are things that we would like to add to our lives or their lives that would make them better, or that if they're removed from our lives, they'll also make our lives better. But keep in mind that all the things that we ask for are done in the service of the Lord. They're not done to get stuff. So be clear about that, okay? They can be from many different categories, as you mostly all know by now. They can have to do with your health and your vitality. They can have to do with your emotional state or your emotional sensitivity, with your spiritual life and your life purpose, with your relationships to anyone in your lives, whether it's your family, your in-laws, your parents, your brothers and sisters, your co-workers, other people that are in your life these days. They can have to do with your selfless service activities, your job and career, your finances, etc. So just take a few minutes and get whatever it is that you would like to improve your life with clearly in your minds. Now, when you're gazing, you only need to look with a very soft, almost unfocused look towards your screens. There's no need to stare or try to transfer energy back and forth. Everything will work perfectly if you just look at your screen with a soft look. At the same time, as you're gazing, you would like to have an empty mind. Let your mind be drained of all thoughts. Let your thinking totally stop. And if it begins again while you're gazing, it's okay. Just notice that and go back to your gazing without thought. It's not too hard to do, but you might have to empty your mind more than once. Before every gazing begins, we do an exercise, a breathing exercise, in which we connect our mind with our spiritual heart center right down here in the center of our chest. We're going to do this 3 times. So let's begin right now. Let's all breathe in deeply. Now breathe out and imagine your consciousness is dropping down into the spiritual center of your heart. And notice how your heart feels at the end of your out breath. That's the point at which your consciousness has reached your spiritual heart center. And usually you will feel something very specific at the end of the out breath. So let's do that once again. Let's breathe in deeply. Breathe out, consciousness down into your heart center, and notice that feeling at the end of your out breath. Last time, breathe in, breathe out, consciousness down into your spiritual heart center, and notice that feeling reaching the end of your out breath. when you're connecting with all that is. Now let's imagine that our heart center is opening out into the universe and connecting with our idea of the quantum field of love. And see that quantum field of love wrapping around you, enveloping you in its softness and its love. Now you can come back to the room. If you have photographs, they might be on the floor, laid out, or they might be on poster boards. You might just be holding a photo in your hand. Now's the time to put them up if you're holding them in your hand. And you know that holding them up, having photos, is just as effective as being present at the gazing. So Connie and I will be leaving the screen, and we're going to begin.
No, well, we won't be leaving.
Oh, no, we won't be
but
leaving the screen.
Speaking of screens,
I have to do a little technical
correction
here. Okay. We've got another little
technical glitch.
Technical glitch here. Just a moment.
Okay, now we need to be on the screen.
Yeah. Okay, we're back. The computer wanted to do something automatically, and not much we can do about that. So right now, let's begin gazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to move right into the program. And first, we're going to show you a chart about the properties of a crystal or a mineral called Shungite, Shungite, which is a very popular mineral that is mined in Russia. As you can see there, it is the color silver or black, or sometimes it comes in a combination of silver and black. And the mineral company that we just learned yesterday that actually has a mine there is Instagram.com/CHISTOKOV. So Chistokov. Number 3, Shungite is very good for manifestation, and it's useful for EMF protection. And also, you could put a regular rough chunk or a pyramid like this, or a ball, or any type of Shungite near your computer. That is very helpful. Now then, you can also do a search to find out about companies or rock shops near you just by searching online for rock and mineral or lapidary shops. So as we said, it's very helpful for protecting you from electromagnetic frequency disruptions. You could also wear it as a necklace or earrings or a bracelet. Shungite is helpful for removing anxiety, insomnia, and inflammation. I've also read that it relieves schizophrenia, but I have absolutely no verification of that being true. No ideas about this, so you'll just have to experiment and do your own research and try it yourself. Now, if one wanted to experiment, you could probably buy or make a headband and tape some Shungite chips inside it. You could intend that it bring relief, since the mental body or mental sheath is not inside the head, but is actually outside your physical body. Shungite can clear carpal tunnel syndrome in the wrist. Now, our good friend Lynn sent us these cotton gloves and said that if we would put these Shungite magnets inside the glove, and you can tape it in or just put it in directly, and sleep with the gloves on at night, that it would be very helpful for relieving carpal tunnel or also trigger finger. Now, I did this for a few nights, and what I discovered was that not only did it relieve the pain in the wrist from carpal tunnel, but it also caused me to sleep very soundly through the night. And after 3 nights of using the gloves with the Shungite magnets on the inside, I didn't wake up once, when normally I might wake up once or twice during the night. So it had insomnia clearing properties. I was thrilled about that. And thank you, Lynn. Also, I just understand today that Lynn of plasmaenergysolution.com has a new product for causing very balanced sleep. Now then, I wanted to mention too that the bonus gift that caused me to sleep soundly through the night for the first time in years was something that caused me to then decide to try to experiment with 2 or 3 different things at once, which I'll tell you about in just a moment. Now we're going to talk about EMP reduction. So you can just, as we said, put a piece of Shungite next to your computer or on your phone or around your TV and just notice how you feel after that. There's also a product that is very good for getting a good night's sleep, and that is something that I also have been experimenting with, and it's this. It's called Pure Sleep by Cliff High, and it is put out by a company that I'll show you a chart on in just a moment. Now, The third thing I'm doing, in addition to experimenting with the gloves and the Shungite minerals and the Pure Sleep by Cliff High, is the Grabovoi insomnia code for a sleep disorder, which is 514248538. Also, Shungite protects from dark influences, and you could wear a Shungite pendant or earrings to repel malevolent people or entities. It's important that each person does their own processes and their own experimentation. Now, here on Cliff High's Pure Sleep, you take a small scoop, which is probably about a heaping teaspoon, it'll say on the directions, of Pure Sleep, and he's in Washington State, USA. You put this in half a glass of whole milk or almond milk just before bedtime. It's a non-toxic dairy supplement which promotes health and well-being. It's supplied by Pure Bulk, www.pureBulk.com/products/cliff-highs-pure-sleep. The reason I am reading this to you is not to insult your intelligence, but because some of the people that attend gazing are blind and they're not able to read what we have on the screen. Now, the Pure Bulk Company is open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific Time. The phone is 1-888-280-0050. In fact, I just found out yesterday it is so popular and so in demand that it's temporarily out of stock, and that you can get it if you order right away in 4 to 6 weeks. Now, naturally, we don't ever receive any remuneration or funds or discounts or anything from any companies that we mention have been beneficial for us. That is, their products have helped us in some way. And we don't promote products. We might mention in passing that we used a certain thing and found great relief from it. All right. Now then, as I mentioned earlier, for the Grabovoi code for insomnia, you can put that on your foot or calf, some firm place on your body, leave it overnight, and then also leave it on your body until the numbers wash off in the shower, and then just rewrite it. And as we say, use a ballpoint pen. Don't use a Sharpie because it's unnecessary. It makes a big mess and smears. So just a ballpoint pen is fine. Now then, if you are, like me, an earth sensitive affected by weather fronts or earthquake, piezoelectric waves, solar flares, gamma rays, or volcanic eruptions, you might find relief in using either or both Pure Sleep and or Shungite. No promises. You just have to experiment and find out what works for your unique body-mind complex. Sometimes in the past, I had used a half tablet of melatonin for sound sleep, but in the morning, I felt very foggy-brained as a result. But with Pure Sleep, the Grabovoi code, and the Shungite magnets, I had no brain fog after effects. Now then, there is another chart for 2 more of the Grabovoi codes for these times. Some of you received this from me already. One is called Standing Your Ground. This is by Melissa Joy Johnson, and it is 110 or 110. And the other is The Healing of Sorrow by Grigory Grabovoi, and that is 541-8538. Now, we've covered those resources that we wanted to, and we're now going to the part of the program to talk about some ways in which Mother Mary blesses humanity. As most of you know, Mother Mary started coming to me in 1980 and later gave me over 1,000 prophecies, which we mention in our book, Mary's Miracles and Prophecies, Intimate Revelations of a Visionary, which is now available on ebook, and 100% of all the proceeds go toward pediatric heart surgeries for babies in India. But in addition to appearing to me in apparitions and giving me guidance and prophecies through locutions or inner messages, Mary has blessed us in a myriad of ways and can do the same for you, if that's your divine dharma or life purpose. Now, by that I mean that not everyone is scripted to be a prophet in this lifetime, but everyone, in fact, can benefit from the dozens of ways in which beloved Mother Mary and Jesus and Sai Baba show their love for us if we're sincere in wanting to purify ourselves for service to humanity. All right, here's the chart. Some ways in which Mother Mary blesses humanity. 1, through direct healing. Now, when she does this, it's so fascinating that sometimes she will shoot a ray of light out of her heart or out of her forehead that goes directly into a sick person. Number 2, by warning and protecting us from danger. 3, by creating healing grottos, springs, chapels, and other venues. And there are hundreds of these around the world where people gather for healing and prayer and singing and worship. Also, number 4, through manifesting healing oil on statues, crosses, and paintings. She has done this in the Middle East and in Russia in particular. Number 5, through prophecies that warn, uplift, or educate the public, especially in certain areas of the planet that are very vulnerable to upheaval from earthquakes, tidal waves, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, and so on. And then 6, through inner messages or locutions. 7, by providing insight, discernment, or supernatural awareness to people. Then also, number 8, by giving people hope and encouragement during difficult times or situations, either individually for them or for a nation or the planet, like now. Number 9, by reconciling families and nations which have become estranged. For example, where various tribes or groups of people have been fighting, or where there has been divorce or some sort of hard feelings within families. Number 10, by identifying the ideal next home or community for you if you need to relocate. And she appeared to us one time many years ago when we were living in Littleton, Colorado, and I had been going around with a realtor looking at countless houses, and I was exhausted and just sat down and cried, feeling so frustrated that we would never find our next right place to live. I hardly ever cry, unless it's for joy. Mostly I'm laughing all the time or just being silent. Well, Mary appeared in the living room and said, "Beloved heart, what's the matter? Why are you crying?" And I said, "Oh, Mother, I've looked for so many places, and I just can't find the right one. They either have a railroad track right next to the house or a highway or high-tension wires or something that would be unpleasant or unhealthy." And she said, "Well, beloved heart, why didn't you ask Jesus in me?" And I said, "Mother, I didn't know you were into real estate too, with all of your healing and prophecies and bilocation and the many things you do." And she said, "Well, actually, yes, that's a little known fact and a role that Jesus and I very gladly play. There are so many light workers that are needing to move because of changes in their roles, and you're one of them." I said, "I am?" She said, "Yes, you keep looking for a nice house in a cul-de-sac in a subdivision, but it's not the time for you to live in a subdivision anymore. It's time for you to live in the country on a nice ranch or a farm." And I said, "Oh no, we don't know anything about that. Oh, we don't even have any pets. We couldn't live on a farm or a ranch." And she said, "Well, think of it this way. You're going to become very well known around the world." I said, "Well, how could that be?" She said, "Just wait, you'll see. You need to be in a place that is more secluded, but that is in the center of many accessible medium to large size cities. And Jesus and I have been watching you look at various houses, knowing that you weren't going to find them suitable. And we have found a 32-acre farm in northern Colorado that you might like. And if you don't like it, we have lots of other properties. So I was totally bewildered and said, but why would we need to be on such a big piece of land? She said, because it's more serene, it's healthier, and it's safer. The cities are becoming very upheaved. The youth and teenagers are running amok, and crime is going through the roof. So it would be better for light workers to be out, away from all of that. And Jesus and I can help people find just the right house or just the right property on a piece of land or a community. Many, many people are going to be moving to communities to be self-sufficient in the future. Well, we were just amazed. She told us the name of the real estate agency and the name of the realtor. We called her up, found the property, and she asked, well, how did you find my listing? Since I'm here in northern Colorado and you live in southern Colorado, or South Denver, actually. And we said, well, our friend Mary told us about you. I wasn't going to tell her the whole story because most people at that time couldn't take it. All right, so we found it, we loved it, and we've made a lot of changes since then. And Mary told us, you can't live in the city because lots of people will be coming to visit and there won't be enough parking places and your neighbors will call the police on you. You don't want that. You want a place where you have lots of parking, lots of fresh air. You can see animals and mountains and meadows and forests. I said, that sounds like a good idea. All right. And then finally, by manifesting, the next thing that she does is number 12, manifesting healing oil on the hands of some attendees during Skype group gazings. She did this in London and also in Los Angeles and told the people it was healing oil and to ask who in the room was either sick or about to have surgery and to ask permission to wipe it on their hands, and they would have a healing or a reduction in their post-surgical hospital stay, which in fact happened. Now, I'd like to tell you some teaching stories about how various people who had a one-pointed love for God were surprisingly given blessings, miracles, and even food manifestations for the multitudes of people that they understood most needed God's grace in an emergency. So this is a very thrilling thing to contemplate how miracles are happening in our times. And in fact, the greatest spiritual renewal or interfaith revival in the history of the earth has started. It's very big in the United States now, and there are certain states such as Florida and Tennessee and California and Pennsylvania where people are flocking to, to see angels and watch miracles and to be healed or observed healings and to worship God. Now then, when Jim and I first started taking 55 groups of sick people to India for healings with Satya Sai Baba 40 years ago, he would do epic feedings of the multitudes for thousands of local poor people about a dozen times a year. Now, back then, when we first went, the people lived in thatched huts supported by 4 poles and set upon an earthen floor. So it was just a wide open thatched roof set on the dirt. And they had no furniture, no doors or windows to the buildings, and there wasn't even a pane of glass in the entire town at that time. There were some accommodations for foreigners, thankfully, but there were no doors or windows, just pieces of material nailed up or taped up over the door or the window. Devotees would gather outside at darshan time in rows of 50 each on pale orange sand in front of the Mandir temple, waiting for Sai Baba to come out and heal or bless the people or manifest rings or watches or things for the attendees. And then later, we would all have food that he gave to us free of charge, all those years, free of charge, on the temple veranda, and the food was sitting in gigantic silver-colored cauldrons with simple wood tops and long paddles for stirring it. It was quite the scene. It was biblical in appearance, with colorful rows of sari-clad people sitting quietly and politely in double rows. That's women on one side, men on the other, sitting in double rows, facing each other with round banana leaf plates in front of each person. Now, it's the custom in India and many other countries in Asia or the East that men and women sit separately for social events and also for worship. So volunteers would carry buckets of rice, dal, sweet potato, and creamy spinach and walk up and down the rows, lovingly ladling out food to each attendee. Now, since most of the villagers were extremely poor and could only afford a cup of rice and a chapati bread each day, they were ecstatic to be in Baba's presence during the feast day of singing, private interviews with him for instruction, and enjoying several tasty dishes which they could very seldom eat during the rest of the year due to their poverty. That's not like that now. He has created free schools and hospitals and institutions and canteens for local village people all over India. Now, being a practical sort of person myself, I could not understand how as many as 5,000 people at a time could be served second or third helpings of food from a mere 4 or 5 giant silver-colored pots, which were about 4 feet high and 4 feet wide. It was impossible. I kept calculating it, how many cups would fit in each pot, and so on and so on. It was impossible. So every hour or so, I walked right up on the veranda and lifted the wooden pot lids to peek inside. Now, things were very different then. Men and women could walk all around the ashram and go on the veranda, walk in the temple whenever they wanted to, without having to line up and go through all sorts of strict waiting procedures. Well, back then, as I kept peeking inside the pots, the food had not diminished beyond the halfway mark in the pot. And the food was piping hot all day, in spite of no stove under the pots. It just boggled my mind. Only God could do that. I kept thinking to myself, how does he do this? Well, a few years later, I heard about multiplication of the food in the U.S. from our dear late Sai Baba's sister, Cynthia Robinson, from Detroit, Michigan. She called excitedly one day to tell us about a miracle that had happened to her having to do with the, bless you, bless you. All right, so Cynthia told us about a miracle that happened to her, and then a different type of miracle of manifestation that happened to one of her volunteer friends that both helped out at the Detroit, Michigan Salvation Army Center on Thanksgiving Day. It seems that each year the Salvation Army Thanksgiving volunteers of all faiths had cooked, organized, served, and delivered a sumptuous holiday dinner for 50 local homeless men. The ladies worked for days, baking and making roasted turkey, ham, dressing, sweet corn, sweet potato casserole, dinner rolls, salad, green beans, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie, and coffee and tea for the thin, appreciative homeless men. There were no shelters in the area for those men. That year, unbeknownst to the volunteer cooks, homelessness had tripled in the Detroit area. They had no idea. About 15 minutes before noon, Cynthia opened the locked front door to peek out and check and see how many men were standing in line, expecting to see 50. She couldn't believe her eyes when she saw a long line winding around the block. She asked Sammy, the first man in line every year, to kindly walk along the line and count the number of men and tell them it would be another 10 minutes before the door would be unlocked for Thanksgiving dinner. Sammy ran down the line, counting quickly, and came back shortly and said, "Mrs. Robinson, you won't believe it. There are 150 men in the line. 3 times more than we usually have. And they're all starving and they're cold. Some of them don't even have jackets. We sure hope you have enough food for all of us, Sammy laughed nervously. Sammy, God will always provide, she said. He knows our needs even before we do. That sounded very good and confident. But then she ran inside with big eyes and said to the other volunteers, "Start praying, everybody! Start praying! We need a miracle, and we need it now. We only cooked enough for 50 men, and there are 150 outside, and they're cold, and they're thin, and they're hungry." She ran into the kitchen where she had laid out pans and bowls of food, and then she started rifling the cupboards to get another 6 empty, big serving vessels. Then she said in a loud, authoritative voice, "Lord, we need more food. We need 3 times the food we have. Help us, please. More food, please." Then she dashed outside the kitchen to the big room to continue setting the long tables with cutlery, cups, and glasses and dishes. After 2 minutes, she ran back in the kitchen to check, but the empty serving vessels hadn't yet been filled. She then shouted out, "Lord, these are your children. These men hardly ever get a decent meal each day. We have to help them, Lord. We need for you to fill each of these empty pans with hot food now. No disrespect, Lord, but we need you to cook it and fill it up in the next 5 minutes or less. So could you please cook it and put it in the pans in 5 minutes? You can do anything. So would you please do it?" Then, in her anxiety and nervousness, she lost all sense of politeness and civility and banged one of the serving pans on the counter. Well, Cynthia then ran back into the dining room and saw the open-mouthed volunteers staring at her. "We could hear you shouting at the Lord," they said. "Maybe you should try thanking him." Well, Cynthia, who had always been a bit bossy and admitted it herself, stared back and said, "Oh, right. Good idea. I'll try that." So then she ran back into the kitchen and said, "Lord, we love you, and we thank you for anything that you'd be willing to do to help. I'm sorry I was yelling at you just now. I just don't know what we'll do if the men start crying, or they even start fighting with each other or with us if there isn't enough food. It's so sad to see them, your children, Lord, shivering in the cold and longing for a good meal. Some of those men haven't eaten in 2 days. Now we know that you know what's best, and we leave it in your hands, Lord." She then ran to the front door and shouted out, 10 more minutes, don't worry. We have turkey, ham, pumpkin pie, and all the fixings." Then she ran back into the kitchen, wringing her hands in desperation. As soon as she walked into the kitchen the 3rd time, she saw that the 6 large serving pans were filled to the brim with hot, fragrant, steaming food. "Thank you, Lord." She started crying and ran out to the large room shouting, "The Lord has given us a miracle. He gave us plenty of food, and he also gave me the knowledge that the serving vessels will replenish themselves so that everyone can have seconds." And thus it was that they did refill themselves through his grace. Everyone could have seconds or thirds, and some people even took away food in bags so that they could have a meal the very next day with leftovers. As the volunteers were cleaning up after the dinner and the last diners were taking away their to-go bags of leftovers, one of the volunteer ladies, named Bertha, said to Cynthia, "Were you praying to that Indian guru of yours, Sai Baba, for the food when you went in the kitchen and started yelling and banging?" "Yes, I was," Cynthia said. "You know, I believe he's the father of Jesus and the father of all of us, and he loves all of humanity, even when we are a bit naughty like I was. He knows what we need before we know it. If we ask him nicely, he can help us with our basic needs of all types." You notice he didn't give us the food until I started asking him nicely. Well, So what I want to know, Bertha said, is how do I go about asking for a new refrigerator? My old one broke down and I had my sons haul it away. Now there's just a big space in my kitchen. Everybody needs a refrigerator. I'd like to ask Sai Baba for one that is almond colored. I've been thinking about this tall and this wide, with an ice maker and a large freezer on one side and lots of bins and shelves on the other side. Now, Cynthia, do I have to be one of his followers to ask him for that? Can he hear everybody's prayers? Would he mind if I still love Jesus and pray to Jesus? Cynthia just laughed and said, well, sure. He knows everybody, and he knows the past, present, and future of everyone on the earth, billions of people, and he gladly helps anybody at any time. His motto is, I have come to give you what you want until you have come to want what I have really come to give you, which is enlightenment or self-realization. Then Bertha stepped back and said, but Cynthia, I don't want enlightenment, whatever that is. I just want a refrigerator. I want a perfect refrigerator in almond color for the alcove in my kitchen, and I have no money and no husband to buy one. So you're sure it's okay if I still am a Christian and just want the fridge? Cynthia was bending over as she laughed. She said, I told you, it's okay. Just ask him nicely and be specific about any request. Well, the next day, Cynthia got an excited call from Bertha, who was nearly screaming. She was so excited. Cynthia! Cynthia! You won't believe this, she said. Your Guru Sai Baba heard my prayers. This morning at 9 o'clock, I was standing in the living room when I heard this loud bump and thump, whoomp, whoomp, against my front door. I opened it up to see what was happening, and there, leaning against my door, was a brand new, sparkling, almond-colored, side-by-side refrigerator, just like I asked for. I looked around it just in time to see an open-topped appliance delivery truck zooming around the corner. The gate of the truck was swinging open and flapping, and so the refrigerator must have fallen out when the truck hit the speed bump in front of my house. I called my sons and asked them to quickly get a dolly and bring it and come over right away, because we had just been given a miraculous gift of a fabulous new fridge that fits perfectly in the alcove. Oh, I love that story. And Cynthia was laughing and crying while she was telling me, oh my goodness, so many wonderful things were happening. Now, over the years, we've heard many stories regarding ordinary people being used by God to feed the hungry people at holidays. In fact, my brother told me about a time at his Catholic church in Woodstock, Virginia, when the congregation decided to take up a collection for Christmas turkeys for the poorest families in the parish so that all of them could enjoy a nice holiday dinner. When the priest bought the dozen or so turkeys for the recipients and took them in ice chests to the lobby of St. John Bosco Church the next Saturday, they decided to arrange them so they could easily open the lids, take out the turkeys, and hand them to the dozen or so people that would be waiting outside. Then it occurred to them, maybe we should look outside and see how many people are out there. Familiar story. To their horror, twice as many families as they had planned for were waiting outside in the chilly air, expectantly. One of the priests said to the waiting people, just give us another 5 or 10 minutes, then we'll open the door and welcome you in to get your turkeys. Then he ran inside, pale and anxious, and said, Fathers, we don't have enough turkeys. What are we going to do? Should we draw numbers, or what should we do? One of the priests said, wait, let me listen. And then he said, well, I heard my interior voice say, just stay calm, open the door, smile at the people who are my people, and then distribute the turkeys. There will be enough turkeys for all. Don't worry." And, indeed, they kept picking out turkeys from the ice chest and picking out more turkeys, and they went way past 12, and picking out more and more and more until everybody in the line got one. The Lord provides. The Lord guides. Another time, we heard about the famous Denver philanthropist, the late Daddy Bruce, who fed the hungry and homeless each year at Thanksgiving and Christmas in his downtown restaurant. As people stood in long lines, Daddy Bruce sliced hundreds of slabs of ham and turkey from just one large ham and one large turkey until everybody had been served at least once. "The Lord always provides," he would chuckle. That seems to be a very popular saying among people that the Lord uses for his miracles and manifestations. Another food blessing has to do with a lesson that I learned in Alaska at the Spiritual Unity of the Tribes gathering. Since then, I've been blessed to speak and teach all over the world and have traveled in 60 countries and have given talks on Mary's prophecies and Sai Baba's teachings and miracles to Yupik Eskimos, to Native Americans, Air Force Academy cadets, corporate officers and CEOs, to many doctors and hospital staff, and just about every type of group imaginable. Once when I had finished a talk in Alaska to Native elders in a forest near Fairbanks, Alaska, the chief of the tribe walked over and told me that since I was a guest of honor, they were giving me the good luck blessing of taking the tray of food to the tribal elders so they could be served first. You know, of course, we should always serve elders first at any occasion. Now, this is a very coveted service opportunity to show respect for the elders by serving their favorite food first, since they have spent their lives helping and serving the rest of us. "Here it is," he said happily. "It's a rare delicacy that we all love. This is called whale blubber." Well, as I looked down at the tray of brown, shiny, jiggling jello-like blubber, I suddenly felt I was going to get sick. I was a vegetarian, and I wasn't accustomed to seeing raw food or cooking raw meat or handling it in any way, just simply because I love animals, so I don't eat them. But I don't care what other people eat. However, this was a test. Now, since we were out in the woods, there was no graceful way to scurry away and get sick without everybody hearing me and seeing me, because we were close together in a clearing in the forest. And I said, "Help me, Lord. What do I do? I don't want to get sick. Don't let me get sick. I don't want to spoil the feast." A few seconds later, my inner voice said, "Just focus on the elders, not on yourself. They're hungry and they love this food. Be happy for them and imagine yourself in their place. Put yourself in their shoes. Serve God in them and be grateful for this honor. From now on, serve God in every person that you encounter." Well, immediately I felt very ashamed of having been so self-centered, and all nausea left me as I smiled and walked across the circle to offer the jiggling, shiny, glistening whale blubber to the eagerly awaiting elders. After that great blessing in the future, I did put myself in the shoes of all those I was feeding, and I saw how happy they were to receive hot food, just as I would be if I were in their place, whether they were recipients that were Indian lepers, or Native American villagers, or starving American children, or ex-offenders from just having been released from prison into a scary world at a bus stop next to a public park. Seeing God in them has made all the difference and put the emphasis on God's generosity where it should be. And finally, Mother Mary gave an unusual gift to a woman that was meditating in a chapel dedicated to Mother Mary in Longmont, Colorado, at St. John the Baptist Catholic Church. Our friend Kyle told me about this experience. One day, He was meditating in the perpetual adoration chapel there with one other person present, this woman, when all of a sudden the woman burst out speaking in tongues very strongly, which is a gift of the Spirit. Both she and Kyle were startled at the outburst, and when she got up to leave, Kyle rushed over to her and said, "Excuse me, but it sounded as if you were just speaking in tongues. Is that right? And do you often do that when you're praying? Do you only do it here in this perpetual adoration chapel? Could you tell me about it?" "Oh, no. It's never happened before in my life," she said. "In fact, until you just told me what it was, I didn't even know the name for it. I couldn't start it by myself or stop it. I didn't know what it was." "Yes, you are very blessed," he said. "It's one of the gifts of the Spirit, and it means that God is giving you a message as well as a new gift." Well, I just opened my mouth, and there I was observing myself saying these unknown words as if I were fluent in some unstudied foreign language. I have to say I felt very peaceful and happy, almost as if I were in a trance while it was happening. They both chuckled at the mysterious ways of the Lord and the Blessed Mother, and smilingly walked out of the chapel at St. John the Baptist Church.
Many people, many people have seen Mother Mary's face or that of Jesus or of Sai Baba superimposed over Connie's face during gazing. But she is just the vehicle for such apparitions, and God himself is the doer in all visions, healing, and miracles. Thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in the new year in January for the next quantum gazing.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, in closing, we thank the Lord and the Ascended Masters and angelic hosts for their love and blessings for you today. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you. We love you. To review this program, since there was so much that was offered, you might wish to see it again and to take detailed notes for your own experiments and keep those notes in a notebook, perhaps. We had told you that we'd be sharing 5 healing techniques with Shungite, which we did. Then we mentioned 11 ways that Mother Mary can help you and told 9 teaching stories about how Mary and the Lord have helped us and many others in emergencies. The refrigerator miracle was another surprise example of how much we're loved by God and his helpers, the masters and the angels. When we pray, meditate, study scriptures, and serve those in need, the Lord can purify us so that our resulting equanimity results in a platform for the quantum field of love to bring forth the beneficial and necessary in any situation. Life in the Spirit, attuning to God with us, is a series of ongoing surprises, delights, miracles, and manifestations. Let him use you as you go ever deeper in your spiritual practices. God bless each of you richly, and thank you for blessing our lives. And now we have the chart of the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. This has been around for decades, as we know, but we might be going through a period these days where it would be good to tape it up on the fridge or mirror or a wall, or have a smaller version on your car dashboard or one in your wallet. All right, now, you may start the meditation, and we'll leave the screen until next time. Again, we love you. The Masters love you. God bless you.